Welcome to the National Institute for Health and Care Research Mentoring Programme and this professional development webinar series. I'm Julie Haddock-Millar and I'm one of the programme facilitators. In this session, we're going to be focusing on mentoring core competencies, and it will be no longer than 10 minutes. So first of all, I'm going to present the European Mentoring and Coaching Council Global Core Competence Framework for Mentoring and Coaching, and we'll consider the application of core competencies in your mentoring practice. In the What Next, we'll look at some reflective questions and at signposts and key resources. Now, the European Mentoring and Coaching Council is one of the leading professional bodies for mentoring and coaching. And some years ago, it created a core competence framework for mentoring and coaching programs and those that wish to train as mentors or coaches and accredit. So whilst we might think about this framework applying primarily to mentors and training programs, it's also helpful from a mentee perspective to gain an insight into the core competencies should you wish to transition into the role of mentor or train and accredit at a later date. So I'm going to talk through each of the 8 competencies in more detail. So the first, understanding self. That's always the starting point with any mentoring or coaching training program, but also as mentors, really understanding our own values, our behaviours, how they influence mentoring practice. So, for example, as mentors and mentees, your understanding of how you perceive mentoring, your expectations of mentoring, and where does that come from? Is that previous experience of mentoring practice, having been a mentee or a mentor, how that might shape values, behaviours, for example, in the mentoring relationship. There is also an ongoing commitment to self-development. So that's a commitment to practicing mentoring, evaluating mentoring, always improving our standard of mentoring practice and maintaining the reputation of the profession. The third core competence is managing the contract. Now, that sounds very formal. Often within coaching, there is a contract in place. Within mentoring, we often talk about the agreement. So developing a mentoring agreement, the expectations that you might have of one another as mentor and mentee, the boundaries, for example, thinking about the organisation and the programme expectations of the mentoring relationship. How long is the mentoring relationship? How many hours? How frequently might you meet, for example? Is there an expectation that you review the mentoring relationship from the organisation, the sponsors of the programme? So a number of items to consider in that phase. Then the fourth core competence, building the relationship. And here we think about how we build rapport, establish trust, agreeing boundaries, thinking about the language we use. So, for example, in some professions, we'll often use a significant number of acronyms, trying to avoid acronyms, for example, simple language that's understandable from both parties' perspectives, whether you're in different disciplines, different organisations. And we can sometimes think about these core competencies within the framework of phases of the relationship. So building the relationship, and then the fifth, enabling insight and learning to bring about change and transition. The core skills that we apply in mentoring of questioning, listening, clarifying, checking, reframing and summarising. So the most significant learning is often when we're applying these skills in our mentoring relationship, where there is significant change and transition. And then the outcome and action orientation. Often within mentoring, we see change and transition that occurs. And so the actions that one might take, an outcome. So thinking about if you were to spend 12 months together, might there be a specific goal and an outcome that you're looking to achieve? It might be, for example, securing funding. It might be a fellowship application, for example. So clarifying and reviewing goals, exploring options, identifying solutions, following up on next steps. As mentors, some of you might apply specific models and techniques that help to bring about insight and learning. And that might be a whole range of models and techniques that you draw from a variety of disciplines or backgrounds. And then evaluation. So this requires the ongoing reflection and review of mentoring practice, the mentoring process. And here we encourage two-way feedback, the mentor providing feedback to the mentee providing feedback to the mentor. How effective is the mentoring relationship? To what extent is it providing value? Might you do anything differently in the mentoring relationship, or more of something if there's an aspect that's working particularly well? So here again are the 8 core competencies, a framework that we use to develop mentoring practice, the understanding of mentoring practice, really thinking through how we apply these in our mentoring relationships and in our mentoring practice. And again, we might think about phases of the mentoring relationship and how some of these competencies align to particular phases, changes and transition points in the mentoring relationship. I've just provided a couple of reflective questions here, thinking about what next. So you might want to think about what competencies do you feel most and least comfortable with? How can you further develop your awareness and application of the core competencies of mentoring? There are a number of key resources. So there is an online topic guide and links to further reading that support this session. And I've just provided a couple here that you might be interested in reading more. And the EMCC Global Core Competence Framework 2015 is also provided here. You're welcome to contact the programme team should you have any questions at all, and the development support email is here on this slide. Thanks so much.